This is James Hendricks with the Black Sheep Reports. Recently, American leaders have something in common with their extremist Islamic counterparts. All of them define everything, implicitly, explicitly, as a jihad, a crusade, a holy war. But the violent methods used in the pursuit of various jihads, whether Islamic or secular, simply serve to perpetuate and often aggravate the struggle. Now, think of America's numerous so-called wars and consider if there have been any measurable progress made in any of them. Lyndon Johnson, he declared a war on poverty in 1964. 52 years later, there are still startling numbers of poor people in the street. And this century, the gap between the poorest many and the richest few has widened. Since the days of President Ronald Reagan, in fact, one might speak of a war on the poor, not poverty. Drugs, 44 years after President Richard Nixon proclaimed the war on drugs, there are still millions in jail, billions being spent, and drugs is rampant in the streets of American cities. Terror, 13 years and counting after the war was launched, terror groups, minor numbers and reach in 2001, have widened, and there's now something like a caliphate. Once Osama bin Laden's fantasy in the Middle East, ISIS in power in parts of Iraq and Syria, Al-Qaeda is on the rise in Yemen, Libya destabilized and divided up among every more extreme outfits, innocents still dying in U.S. drone strikes, Afghanistan, the opium trade has rebounded big time, the Taliban is resurgent, and the region is being destabilized. Iraq, a group of ethnic and religious rivalries and hatreds with more U.S. weaponry on the way to fuel the killing in a country that functionally no longer exists. The only certainty in most of these American wars is the violence continuation, even when their original mission lies in tatters. The very method the U.S. employs and the mentality its leaders adopt ensure their failure. Why? Because drug addiction and abuse can't be conquered by waging a war. Neither can poverty, neither can the war on terror, neither can radical Islam be defeated through armed nation building. Indeed, radical Islam thriving on the very war conditions that Washington helps create. By fighting in the now familiar fashion, you merely fan its flames and assure its progression. It's the mindset that matters. In places like Iraq, Afghanistan, places for most Americans exist only with a war matrix. The U.S. evades or attacks, gets stuck, throws resources at a problem indiscriminately, and makes a desert and calls it peace, to quote a Roman historian, after which our leaders act surprised as hell when the problem only grows. Sadly, the song remains the same in America. More wars made worse by impatient for results driven by each new election cycle. It's a formula in which the country is internally fatted to lose. Recent wars, whether on the war on drugs or in the greater Middle East, are never presented as a challenge we the people can address and solve together, but as something only those who allegedly possess the experience and the weapons can figure out or fight. George W. Bush summed it up this mindset in a classic fashion after 9/11 when he urged Americans to go shopping and visit Disney World and leave the fighting to the pros. War, in short, has something yet another form of social control. Have a gun or a badge of some sort and you can speak forcefully and be listened to. Otherwise, you have no say. In addition, what makes America new wars unique to our moment is that they never have a just endpoint. For what a considered victory over drugs or terror or poverty once started, these wars, by definition, are hard to stop. Now, I know what you're thinking. Here's nothing new. Hasn't America always been at war? Haven't we always been a violent people? Now, there's truth in this, but at least Americans of my grandfather and my father's generation didn't define themselves by war. What America needs right now is a 12-step program to break the urge to feed further our nation's addiction to war. Now, the starting point for Washington and Americans in general would obviously have to be taking the first step and confessing that we have a problem we alone can't solve. Hi, I'm Uncle Sam, and I'm a war hawk. Yes, I'm addicted to war. I know it's just destructive to myself and others, but I can't stop. Not without your help. Now, true change often begins with confession, with humility, with an admission that not everything is within one's control. No matter how violently one rages, indeed that violent rage only aggravates the problem. America needs to make such a confession. Only then can we begin to wean ourselves off of war. This is James Hendricks with the Black Sheep Report. Subscribe if you're new. The links are below, and don't forget to check us out on Facebook. Our page is Media on 9/11. Thank you.